Welcome everyone to Mail Fuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek The Next Generation Season 6 Episode 11. It is called Chain of Command Part 2. So we left off in the cliffhanger, Picard being kidnapped, or abducted.
Captured, maybe.
Captured's maybe a better word, but they did lure him in though, so there's a little bit of a ruse. So he's with the Cardassians. He spends pretty much the whole episode until the very end with them in one room, being interrogated and tortured, and sort of going back and forth with his captor, the David Warner Cardassian, that was introduced in the last episode. And meanwhile, in the Enterprise, of course, we have Captain Jellico trying to navigate the negotiations and the conflict with the Cardassians, who, you know, revealed they've got Picard. I mean, they basically said that at the end of the last episode anyway, but this episode they kind of go more into it and name him directly, eventually show some footage of him, and that causes more conflict between Jellico and Riker at a certain point. So, a bunch of stuff. How did you feel about Chain of Command Part 2?
I liked a lot of it. I liked the Picard stuff. I liked the overall plot of it. I did think it left the Jellico stuff pretty lackluster at the end, a little bit unresolved.
I think the one thing I like about the Jellico resolution, or perhaps lack thereof, is it didn't give you some sort of neat ending where Riker and Jellico kind of, like, you know, grew to like, oh, we both respect each other now. Like the last time they're on screen together, not counting when he's passing command back to Picard, which is, you know, basically they're not speaking to each other at that point. They have this like just honest, I don't like you, I think you're a shit number one, and I don't like you, I think you're a shit captain, and that is legitimately the last they really have a meaningful conversation with each other. I kind of appreciated that it never went back in that and tried to be like, no, I understand what you were doing as a captain now, and I understand why you were like this number one.
Yeah, I didn't need that, but I feel like it set up a lot of ideas with him that it never paid off in any meaningful way. Like last episode, we really liked the stuff with Troy, where it was like, hey, he's actually not that confident, and that just never came back at all.
Nah, that's true. It doesn't. Because I would agree, Picard, like Patrick Stewart's performance in this episode is kind of the standout of the whole thing, which is to say, him being tortured, trying to maintain his will, and what was so funny about it is like the Cardassians are looking for information that I think we're right in saying we believe he doesn't have. Like, you know, they're looking for these specific, like, what are the defense details for this particular planet? Picard says he doesn't know, and he's on like a truth drug, and he answers everything else. He admits who was with him, like, on the mission, which we know he wouldn't do if he was just asked, you know, without the truth serum.
Yeah, it's definitely working.
Yeah, so we have no reason to not believe him when he says he doesn't know this. But of course, David Warner, the Cardassian, keeps, you know, going after him. Obviously, I think at a certain point he also just believes him. In fact, he even says that eventually. But it becomes more about just like breaking him, and like
he just enjoys torturing him.
Yeah. It all boils down to this thing where he keeps turning on these lights, and we can see clearly there are 4 lights. And Picard says there are 4 lights. And he's like, "You're mistaken. There is 5." And then he turns on his pain device thing that makes him hurt. And as the episode goes on, it's like he just wants to break him. He wants to convince him of something that's not true, because that's him truly in control at that point, because he's made Picard believe something, or be willing to lie at the very least. And of course, the end of the episode when he comes back is because there's that final thing where we know that the conflict is over, that Jellico's played this big hand and he's kind of won, and that he's at the last second sort of said, oh, and give us Picard back, because it seemed like he wasn't really giving a shit about Picard for a lot of the episode. But we kind of know it's all dealt with. But we cut back to Picard. He's, you know, at this point he's got stubble, he's barely standing, he can barely speak. David Warner comes in and he's still doing his test, and he's saying, hey, the Enterprise has been destroyed, and like, oh. And I think what I appreciate about this is that when the other Cardassians come in and say, what are you doing, he's supposed to be ready, I do actually really appreciate the little bit of character we get here, where David Warner, like, he was just like milking the last few minutes he had with Picard to try and like break him in this final moment. And we do get this kind of final. I was actually surprised Picard even said anything. I thought it was really going to leave us in an ambiguous phase where we didn't really know if he was going to say there's 4 lights or 5. But he does actually very defiantly, before he goes, yell out, almost like a drunk homeless man, because that's kind of what it looks like at this point. and yells out, "There are 4 lights!" As
and insists on walking off on his own, not being supported by the 2 guards.
Yeah, and the little swerve after this though is that when he sits down with Troy, and it makes sense he needs some counselling, because this was like, if nothing else this episode does right is that it convinces me that this is traumatic for him. Like what he goes through, he feels like he's going through pain. It feels like he's struggling. The first time he turns the pain device on, it's like the way he reacts is fantastic. But he sits down with Troy and explains this final choice that he had, and says, "No, I said there was 4." But he kind of admits that he might have believed there was 5, and his yelling out of "there's 4" was more of a defiance thing than it was a "this is what I really believe it" or "know for sure anymore." You know, he was genuinely starting to doubt this.
He was basically broken at this point.
Yeah. And the idea being that like they got him back just in the nick of time. He was about to be broken. And so I think it achieves the darker side of this that it wanted to, which is just like how traumatizing and how miserable this is for Picard, because it does feel like absolute torture. It feels like this Cardassian is enjoying himself. You know, he's teasing him with drinking water in front of him. He gives him some food eventually, but it's this like Cardassian dish that's this living thing that's clearly disgusting to Picard. But
Very
he's so
slimy looking egg of worms.
Yeah, but he's so hungry, of course, that he ends up just downing
just
it anyway.
It down, doesn't it?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think by and large that is the standout, is the performance of Picard, and I do think it reveals enough about this of David Warner's character, his Cardassian character, over the course of the episode. You get a sense of what he's enjoying about this, and at a certain point, like, they don't need any more information from him. They don't actually want anything else from him. He's just doing this.
Yeah, I think it gets a little bit exposition-y when he tells him about the backstory of being a kid on the. I think it's in the scene with the eggs.
Yeah.
Being a kid on the streets, and I think maybe that's the one bit where it's like, maybe we didn't need to go quite in that much detail. I think we had enough of him already.
I think I'll stick up for it a little bit, actually, and the reason being, not so much that he goes into this story, but more the point that's made with Picard afterwards, where Picard, flips this on him and says, "Okay, so you've just told me this story that this older kid, this bigger kid, stole your food from you. You had 2 eggs left. He stole the eggs. He broke your arm." And Picard, again, somewhat defiantly says, "You're torturing me, but like torture is not it's basically it's proven at this point not to be an efficient way of getting information out of someone." And the idea being that this Cardassian has just revealed some stuff about himself, which he can now push as a button, and he does. Like, he gets really upset when Picard starts saying, "All I'm ever going to see when I look at you now is a scared 6-year-old who couldn't like defend these eggs," and he throws it back at him. So I think so. I really like this in the sense of what they use it for. I mean, maybe you could argue that the way he goes into the story, but I kind of took that as his hubris, like he's trying to because he does like digging into Picard and he wants to try and connect with him. Because I think this is after the scene where he's got his daughter in the room, I think.
It is,
yeah. So the subject of children and how they see things differently. And we see that like they basically train their kids to just hate everyone else. Like, humans don't love their children like we do. It's not the same as us. So there's some interesting ideas, and
it's dehumanizing tactics 101, basically.
Yeah, and we do get some mythology out of this as well. The idea that the Cardassians used to be more of a peaceful race, more someone that was more I don't know if to use the word religious per se, but more spiritual, perhaps, I think was the word that was used. And that all changed. They decided to lead into war, into strength and military, and that's kind of like what we're seeing now is like. Because Picard says, this previous war you had, like, got hundreds of thousands of Cardassians killed, and it's not exactly left you in a great place, but it's not been that long, and you're already gearing up for another one. Like, what is the end game here exactly? So, and maybe this is stuff that's more for Deep Space Nine than it is for this show. This is like all good sort of like groundwork to understand what the Cardassians are and how they think and how they operate.
There's a little cynical part of me that feels this is we kind of changed the Klingons so much over the years. We kind of need something to fill that void again of kind of what we had. Just like here's the easy war target. And don't get me wrong, I think they're giving them a bit more nuance and depth this time around, but it definitely feels like they kind of want to. That was the reason for it. They wanted to fill that kind of that storytelling hole.
I can see that. I think I would agree that they have a bit more nuance. They have a bit more layers because they feel more like another group of people than just like a yelly, like monster race. Like the Klingons were kind of portrayed as when they first, showed up.
Wrong. Obviously, the Klingons have a lot of nuance now by this point in this show.
Yeah.
But when they were used as just they're the warlike enemy.
Yeah, I think with this though, I can already get the sense that they're going to deal with the politics of dealing with the Cardassians a lot, and I feel like it's going to go into a lot of things that probably we never really touched on with the Klingons until it was time to like have them join the Federation, have the peace treaty, have all that stuff. Yeah. So, I mean, at the very least, I'm intrigued as to the future of dealing with the Cardassians, and I also think that at some level, like, if you keep introducing new races that are going to be big plot proponents, like, I think ultimately after a certain point, you're going to be able to compare all the new ones to one that's came before, so, like, here you can compare this one to the Klingons a little bit, but just in a similar vein, there's ones in the future that I'm sure you can compare to the Borg, there's ones in the future you can compare, I mean, hell, Romulans and Vulcans are already, like, a pair,
I'm sure. I think this one, it just stood out to me as it was more of the Klingons evolved storytelling was, they moved on from this stage to where they are now, and it very much feels like this is we kind of still want something in that vein of the original Klingons. So I felt it more so than in maybe some in some other comparisons that you might make.
Yeah, I think I like the extra layer of mythology here though, because obviously the links to the Bajorans, which was already established, and like all this other history that's separate from the Federation is kind of interesting.
It is, yeah.
Whereas I don't know if
there's a lot going on.
I don't know if the Klingons ever had that, where there was like, oh, there's all this history they have with someone else that we've never really talked about.
Not specifically. We knew they just liked a lot of war, right, in general.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think they're off to a good... I wonder if they knew when they introduced them last season, if, like, they were already thinking about a possible spin-off and they were thinking of, like, setting up something, or if it's a case of they liked what they set up in that episode early last season, and then obviously by now they know, because like literally the show was about to start, but I wonder if the choice was like at a certain point about a year before this, did they say, okay, who have we introduced that we can expand on and who did we like, or was it already kind of an inkling like, okay, we're kind of like trying to like plant the seeds here because we think we're going to like develop them later?
It's hard to say. I could see it being either or, to be honest.
Yeah,
it's the sort of thing where it's just far enough in time removed that it could have been long-term seeding, or it could just be what a lot of TV writing is, where they just pick up an idea and run with it.
Because I'm just thinking of the timeline, because it was early last season and shows take a while to develop and get greenlit, so I could believe that like the idea of Deep Space Nine and like developing it as a show was already underway at that point.
Definitely.
So it's entirely possible that they already knew Deep Space Nine. But no, I mean, that wasn't greenlit yet, but they knew it was a possibility when they started season 5.
It is. It just depends, because like I say, it was early in the season. It really depends on just when that episode was written.
Yeah. Because for comparison's sake, and I'm not just doing this to make a Buffy reference, but I happen to know the timeline here.
Convenient, that.
The choice, or the sort of the discussions of maybe spinning off Angel into a show started happening towards the end of season 2 of Buffy, so it was something that was kind of like starting to be thought about then, and then obviously it launched alongside season 4. Angel season 1 was the same time as Buffy season 4, so they knew presumably throughout all of season 3, or were developing it, and then somewhere towards the end of season 3 had it greenlit for the following season. So if the timeline's kind of similar here, it is very likely they did know that they had something cooking. Again, whether or not it was a sure thing or not, it's another question, but probably not.
But it was seeded in such a way that it didn't feel like obvious setup. We felt it because we knew what was coming. But in itself, it didn't feel like it was out of place. So if this show had never gone anywhere, if the spin-off had never happened in the end, no one would have looked twice at that episode.
I think that's for 2 reasons. I think one, just because the mythology that was introduced with the Bajorans and the Cardassians was interesting on its own for an episode that did feel tied up. I also think 2 is because it felt like it had a purpose at the time, which was to introduce Ensign Ro. Like that was like what came out of it was her, and So yeah, it never felt anything. And I feel like if let's say they made this episode and then for some reason Deep Space Nine didn't get greenlit or something, like I would feel like this wouldn't feel like a weird inclusion either. I would just expect to see the Cardassians again on Next Gen at some point for an episode or a two-parter or something down the line, which they probably would have done if Deep Space Nine never got greenlit. I assume there probably would have been a two-parter in season 7 that would give you like a big final Cardassian story.
They're definitely morphed some of the ideas that were in the back of their head into a story later down the line.
Yeah.
Maybe they'd have used them for the movies.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. There you go. That's an idea. But no, all the Picard stuff really liked. The other stuff on the Enterprise, which is, obviously Riker and Jellico aren't getting along very well, but there's definitely a scene where it comes to a head, which is where Jellico refuses to acknowledge that this was a mission that Picard was on from the Federation, because the Cardassians say, hey, we'll give you Picard back if you take all of your ships out of the sector and leave it to us, which obviously, and Riker says as much, I'm not suggesting we do that, I'm not suggesting we give up a whole space sector for one person, that's ridiculous, but if you admit that he was on a mission from the Federation, then he counts as a prisoner of war, and therefore there's a certain, there's rules, there's a treaty that they have to adhere to. Whereas right now they don't, and Jellico basically says, "No, just accept that he's gone." Like that's his attitude at this point, and they kind of come to a head, and Riker just questions something, and it very quickly leads to Riker being, taken off duty, relieved of duty, and it's a very cathartic scene to finally hear Riker just sort of like give out to him a little bit, and it's all very. He says it in the proper way. He isn't like step out of line in a way. He's like, no, I'm the first officer. I meant to point out when you're making a possible mistake. And if anything, like if you were trying to set up like a balanced thing here where we could maybe see Jellico's side of this and understand that Riker is kind of in the wrong, I don't think it does that. I think Jellico here does feel like he's stepping over kind of like certainly a sensitivity line, if not there's no compassion for his crew at this point.
He might objectively be in the right in the grand scheme of things, right? In terms of just strategically, and like, okay, if we acknowledge he's there, that opens us up to, now they can retaliate, right? So I can understand the logic of where he's coming from in the cold hard facts of it, but it doesn't present it that way to us.
No, I think it's the way that he immediately just wants to get rid of Riker the second Riker is willing to actually challenge him on it. It makes it feel like it goes back to that lack of confidence thing, even though they don't really go into it much, but the idea that he will just get rid of someone he thinks will challenge him, rather than saying like, no, if someone's challenging me, that makes me have to like really know that I'm doing the right thing because I have to strengthen it, I have to be able to argue it. Instead, he just wants that negative voice removed. He wants the counterpoints to not be presented to him. So, and maybe even if he is right most of the time, it's still like very arguably a thing to have, because once in a while you might actually miss something or you might be wrong about something, and at those points you want the person there who's going to say, why didn't you do this? Actually, can I want to just slight tangent here. What is it you're drinking there? Because it looks like fluid to clean out the toilet or something. What?
It's eucalyptus tea.
Okay, it's very green.
It is very green. It is like I don't know how well this shows up on the camera here, but
it looks like drain cleaner or something.
It's actually brighter than it looks on the camera, I'll be honest with you. Put something white behind it, might show up.
He's drinking like a liquid kryptonite or something over there. Okay,
that's kind of what it looks like. Yeah, it's eucalyptus tea. It's to help with the sinuses.
Yeah, Connor is unsurprisingly got sick.
Yeah, I caught flu. It sucks.
Anyway, so we get this great scene where they have to go in with a shuttle and plant some mines for this plan to work. And we don't really see much of the plan play out. It just kind of works. But the big part of it is that it's going to take a shuttle pilot who's really good, and the captain says to Geordi, I mean, you did this run back in Jupiter in your early days, and you did this Titan maneuver. And he's like, yeah, no, I could probably pull it off, but I mean, honestly, the best person for the job is Riker. He's the best pilot in the crew. So he goes to Riker, and he's just sitting reading a book. He's just sitting being very... He's got the stupid Riker casual shirt on that we've seen a couple
times. With his trombone.
He's not playing with the trombone, but he's got the
No,
trombone
but
out.
it's just there.
Yeah.
Set dressing.
Yeah. I love how it does sound like a bit of a euphemism.
It does, yeah.
He's got his trombone out. But
Yeah.
Jellico comes in and asks him and says, you're aware of the plan, read the pilot. And he's like, let's just drop the ranks. Like, I don't like you. I think you're good number one. I think you're insubordinate. And so on and so on. And it is actually very satisfying for Riker to say, okay, well, since we're dropping ranks, I don't like you. And I don't think you're a good captain. I think you've got everyone on edge. They're all wound so tight because you don't develop an atmosphere of trust. And it's hard to argue those points, honestly. Based on because we get to see how it usually is run with Picard, but also just the atmosphere in the last episode is pretty damning. But it's this idea. Of course, Riker's going to do it because Riker, if this is what needs to happen to save the day, of course he's going to do it. Like, Riker's a proud officer. He always has been.
But he seems very smug about making Jellico ask him.
Yeah, well, because he says, "Yeah, I'm not going to order you to do this." Like, well, ask me then. And he says it's not like he milks it either. He says yes immediately. But I really liked the scene. I really liked them not compromising. Like, obviously there's a mutual understanding of wanting to get things done, but like there was no, like, we respect each other now. If anything, at the end when Jellico's walking away and he's been relieved and he's like, it was an honor working with you or serving with you all, and I'm like, I was almost expecting like him to turn to Riker and just accept you and just walk it off. Yeah. Oh, actually, on this point, when he gets relieved, Data switches to a red uniform. I presume that's because he's the first officer for like a day.
I think so. Yeah, that's the implication I got.
Which
it's a command uniform.
It's yeah. It was weird, to be honest. I'm so used to him in the gold. I didn't like it.
It was strange. Yeah.
Like, Geordi successfully transitioned, and honestly, going back to him in the red would be weird now because I'm so used to him in the gold. But seeing Data in a different color, not keen on. So is Troy just going to stay in her proper uniform now? Is Picard thinking, oh, you know what? Yeah, you should be wearing this. Have I been letting you away with this all this time?
I don't know. It's equally weird still.
Yeah, actually, that was the other thing I liked about the Cardassian stuff was when they started to strip Picard down, so you don't get to have a name, you don't get to be addressed as anything other than human, and he's like completely butt naked, which kind of sold everything. But not only did I like that moment, but I really liked later when the Cardassian calls him Picard at one point when he's getting heated, and Picard goes, "Ha-ha! You called me Picard. You called me by name."
Do you know what it reminds you of? I know this came first, but do you know what it reminds me of? The moment in Casino Royale where where he's being tortured.
I mean, I seen it once a long time ago. I don't remember at all, but
there's the bit where he's being tortured by Mads Mikkelsen, and he's swinging the rope around into the chair with the hole cut out the bottom, and it smacks him in the uncomfortable parts, and he starts laughing, and obviously he's very confused as to why he's laughing, and he's like, oh, well, now the whole world's gonna know you died scratching my balls. It's a similar vibe. It just reminded me of that when I was watching this.
I'll take your word for it. But yeah. But I mean, that's pretty much the episode. It's pretty good, very good.
It is.
So what's notable about this is the last episode of Next Gen we'll be doing for a little bit, because we'll be switching over to Deep Space Nine. Now, the plan, once both of them are airing simultaneously, because we're following the air dates, is to try and have 2 episodes of Trek out a week. It won't necessarily be one of each every time now, because we're going to be following the schedule as they aired. So, for example, like the next, I think, 6 episodes
6, yeah,
are all Deep Space Nine, but the next Trek video we have out will be the first 2 episodes, because it aired as a double, of Deep Space Nine, the big 2-part pilot. So that's what we're doing next. So that's kind of
the real question that I don't know if you thought about. When we get to the end of these and you have to say what's coming next time, do you say what's coming on the next episode that we're reviewing, or the next episode of the respective show?
I haven't thought of it. My gut is to still give you the next episode of TNG just now.
You best decide quickly.
But the reason for that is because I feel like Deep Space Nine, I understand, is a little more serialized. But I figure if it's just, but even if we do keep doing it in Deep Space Nine, if it feels appropriate, we'll never make a mistake if I always just give you the next of the show we're doing, rather than trying to like bounce between them. You know, I feel like that's just ripe for mistakes. Whereas right now I can say, next time on The Next Generation, which will be a little bit away, but next time on TNG, we're doing an episode called Ship in a Ball.
Okay.
And the description on IMDb is as follows. Lieutenant Barclay mistakenly awakes Moriarty in the Forgotten Holodeck program, who then makes his demands clear and unforgettable. So we've got a Barclay episode that's also a sequel to the Sherlock Holmes episode with Moriarty.
That's a deep cut. That was like season 2.
Yeah, 2 or 3. It was way back then, yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty early.
So, yeah, I guess, yeah, sure. So,
I mean, they're laying us thick with these broccoli episodes, aren't they?
it might be a fun time. I mean, we've not had that. I mean, we've had, I suppose it's the second one this season, which is maybe the most dense we've had Barclay in a single season up till now. But
I think I'm feeling that, and I feel like the one last season was in the back half. So he was definitely, because he was mentioned as well in the holodeck one with Worf. So maybe I'm just like I'm hearing his name a lot.
Okay. I have no complaints though. But that is next time on The Next Generation, but that is not what we're doing next. So to reiterate, next time you'll be getting Deep Space Nine Episode 1. So look forward to that. Hopefully you'll enjoy us following the original air date schedule, and we'll be going through as if we were watching them as they were airing many years ago. So look forward to Deep Space Nine. It's exciting. I'm excited to start it and see how I feel about it. But here we go. So yeah, let us know what you thought of this episode in the comments below. Like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. And of course, if you want to support everything, you can hit the super thanks button on YouTube, or of course you can go over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv and support us for as little as $1 per month over there and help keep all the content coming. But otherwise, that is us. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Star Trek, and somewhere out there, Wesley Crusher is sitting with 2 weird alien eggs that he stole from a little Cardassian child.